What if I told you that one of the most powerful tech companies on the planet, worth nearly $3 trillion, spent over $140 billion pushing a product that only 3% of their own users actually wanted? That's not a failed startup. That's not a small miscalculation. That is Microsoft. And that is Copilot. But here's the part that nobody saw coming. The person who blew the lid off this entire disaster wasn't a journalist. It wasn't a leaked document. It was a former Microsoft VP, someone who spent 12 years inside that company, who walked onto Twitter and publicly dismantled everything Microsoft had been telling the world. And when Microsoft tried to fight back, it only made things worse. To understand how bad this got, you need to understand what Microsoft was actually doing to its users. They didn't offer Copilot. They didn't suggest it. They forced it into everything. They introduced Copilot PCs, marketing AI as the future of computing. They added a dedicated Copilot key to keyboards, physically replacing the right control key that users had used for years. And they dropped a floating Copilot button directly inside Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, sitting right on top of your workspace. You couldn't close it, you couldn't move it, it just lived there. On your screen, forever.
In Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, the button sat on top of the user workspace, covering up text and data that the user needed to see. And while you could shrink it to a small carré on the side, you couldn't fully turn it off.
And if that wasn't bad enough, the keyboard? Microsoft literally took away your right control key and replaced it with a button to open an AI app nobody asked for.
To celebrate users losing the right to control their computers, they literally lost the right control on their computers. And it was replaced by the Copilot key, a dedicated button just to open the Copilot app.
Users were furious. The complaints were everywhere. And Microsoft's response? They said engagement with Copilot had actually gone up.
Microsoft tried to save face by noting that engagement with Copilot did actually go up after shoving the button onto everyone's screens, and I gotta say, they've got a point. Rage is a type of engagement.
Rage is a type of engagement. That one sentence tells you everything you need to know about how disconnected Microsoft had become from its own users. Now here's where the real story begins. Matt Valesio, former vice president at Microsoft, technical advisor to Microsoft's old CEO, spent over 12 years inside the company, later moved to Meta AI, then Google DeepMind. This is not some random Twitter account. This is someone who was in the room where decisions were made, and he went public with a number that Microsoft did not want anyone to talk about.
According to Valesio, less than 3% of paying users actively use Copilot. So out of the 450 million Microsoft 365 users, roughly 15 million were converted to paid Copilot seats. They estimate $37.5 billion quarterly, times 4, that's $140 billion a year for Copilot. That's a lot of money.
Let that land for a second. 450 million users. $140 billion spent per year, and only 3% are actually using it. That's not a product struggling to find its audience. That's a product that never had one, and Microsoft knew it. They had the data, they saw the numbers, and instead of fixing the product, they decided to force it harder onto users who clearly didn't want it. So when yet another high-ranking Microsoft executive left this one after 34 years at the company, Valesio had seen enough. He went on Twitter and posted, "Looks like Microsoft just went full hit refresh to hit factory reset." That's a direct shot at CEO Satya Nadella, whose own book is called Hit Refresh. Valesio was saying publicly, for the entire tech world to see that Microsoft hadn't refreshed anything. It had collapsed. Microsoft's lead communications executive fired back, calling it negative framing. Wrong move, because Valesio didn't get emotional. He got statistical.
He said going from Microsoft to Google, Google share surge 230%, Microsoft 0. And he was like, I suppose the whole market was wrong about this, but what do I know? I only saw both companies, how they operate, their strengths and their flaws. Microsoft missed the internet wave, the mobile wave, and now it missed the AI wave.
3 waves, 3 misses. The internet, mobile, and now AI. The man who worked inside Microsoft for over a decade was standing outside the building, pointing at it and saying this company keeps missing the future. And then he went even further, directly addressing Microsoft's leadership.
Hey, stop gaslighting people, deflecting blame, burying skeletons, arguing about the complete factory reset. Just fix things.
Stop gaslighting people. That's not a tech blogger. That's not a YouTube commentator. That is a former Microsoft VP, someone with 12 years of inside knowledge telling the world that Microsoft has been lying to its users, and the communications team called it negative framing. So what did Microsoft actually do? They backed down. Completely. The floating Copilot button in Office, the one that covered your documents, that you couldn't close, that Microsoft said was boosting engagement, gone. Users can now remove it. The Copilot key on the keyboard, the one that replaced write control, that broke workflows that screen reader users couldn't work around.
Microsoft has confirmed that in a future Windows 11 update, users will get the option to remap the Copilot key.
And now through Windows settings, users can permanently uninstall Copilot from Windows 11 entirely. The AI Microsoft spent hundreds of billions building. Deleted with a few clicks.
After all of the drama and the constant fighting with Microsoft are now starting to listen to its users base and basically starting to make changes to their operating system. So this is a massive step in the right direction.
A step in the right direction. Sure, but let's be honest, you don't get a standing ovation for removing the thing you forced on people in the first place.
I'll stand and cheer, and you can sit and cheer.
The absolute minimum.
And we'll be the same height. So no one will know you're not standing.
For doing the absolute minimum, I'm not
doing the absolute minimum. Here's what nobody is really talking about. While Microsoft retreats on Copilot, OpenAI is quietly walking away from Microsoft entirely. The $13 billion partnership that was supposed to make Microsoft the undisputed king of AI, it's being dismantled. OpenAI is building its own infrastructure, its own data centers, its own future, without Microsoft at the center of it.
OpenAI is cutting out Microsoft because they are building out their own infrastructure. But it is shocking that after their giant partnership, OpenAI is really cutting the ties to Microsoft and a lot of their infrastructure.
And the hardware partners are sending the same message. Samsung, Asus, Dell, Lenovo, all shifting toward Linux, all publicly signaling that Windows AI PCs are not what their customers want. So where does Microsoft end up?
I think they're going to be like an IBM or a Xerox, where those used to be juggernaut companies before Microsoft and Apple came along. They're headed to kind of be on the back burner like an IBM was, because IBM was like the king of the 70s.
IBM, the giant that ruled an entire era of computing and then slowly, quietly faded into the background. Microsoft still has Enterprise, still has Azure, still has Office. Their moat is real. But outside of business, outside of the products people are forced to use for work, nobody loves Microsoft. Nobody chooses Windows because they're passionate about it. And every time Microsoft forces something like Copilot onto those reluctant users, it chips away at the last bit of loyalty they have left. Microsoft didn't just fail with Copilot. They revealed something far more dangerous, a company so desperate to be relevant in the AI era that it forgot the most basic rule in all of technology. Build what people want, not what you want them to want. It took a former VP going on Twitter. It took millions of users fighting back. It took months of public humiliation. And all Microsoft could manage was, okay, you can turn it off now. The button is gone. The key is remappable. The app can be deleted, but the $140 billion, the trust they burned, the partners walking away, that's not coming back. Subscribe, because this story, it's far from over.